patch 7.23 is finally upon us, and yeah, there's new heroes, everyone gets a courier, all sorts of crazy changes, but what we're primarily interested in here is how does the new patch affect Chen? How much was Chen nerfed? Is Chen still strong? How do you play Chen in the new patch? We're going to do in this video is go through all the patch notes that pertain to Chen and try to figure out how Chen will be played in this new world. So grab yourself a beer or other beverage and join me as we discuss Chen in the Outlanders update.
My holiness deepens.
Welcome to the Church of Obelisk. If you're new here and you want to get up-to-date, high-quality Chen content, I invite you to join the fold by subscribing to this channel and ringing the little bell. And now let's get into the video. So let's start with what is most important for Chen, which is obviously the Chen changes himself. So Chen was one of the strongest heroes at the Chengdu Major, if not the strongest hero. Obviously, he's going to get some nerfs. And the nerfs he gets are not actually as bad as they could have been. So you have Holy Persuasion minimum health reduced from a flat 1000 to now scaling from 700 to 1000, making obviously level 1 Holy Persuasion a bit weaker, and level 4 is going to be the same, but the mana cost is increased at all levels by 20, meaning Chen is going to be a bit more mana hungry. Especially with this change, and they've got mana costs increased by 50 across all levels. So with these two combined, you actually a lot more mana hungry than you used to be. And then level 10 talent changed from 30% XP gain to 200 health. This is a pretty significant nerf, because the other talent you get is cast range, and cast range is not that strong on this version of Chen. Penitence obviously benefits from it, but for Persuasion it doesn't really matter, and your aura and your ultimate are global anyway. So it's only really good for Penitence and for any sort of active items you might get. Things like Glimmer Cape, like Force Staff, like Medallion. For those, it matters a little bit, but overall cast range is not very strong, so you almost always got this XP gain talent, which is very strong because your talents on high levels are quite strong. Now you get the choice between these two mediocre talents, either health or cast range. I'm not really sure which one you get. I think it's more situational, depending a bit on like how much you're worried about being bursted down and how much you're willing to invest into these kind of items that benefit from cast range. But yeah, overall these nerfs, they're fairly modest nerfs for such a dominant hero. But on the whole, I think this is something that affects position 5 Chen a little bit more than position 3 Chen. Because position 5 Chen, of course, struggles a bit more to get levels. So he's going to be stuck at these low levels of persuasion for longer. So let's jump into all the other changes that affect Chen. So everyone now gets a courier. This means you can always ship yourself out items. This also means you don't have to buy as much region at the start, because you can just ship it out progressively as you need it. And also Observers no longer cost gold. You now start with 3 town portal scrolls. What this means is that position 5 heroes just have a little bit more gold available, because they save 100 gold here, they save 50 gold here, and that just means you can be a bit more greedy on these position 5 heroes. But of course it's something that's going to affect all position 5 heroes, and just generally means that position 5 heroes can be a bit more greedy throughout the game and just have slightly more gold available to them. This is a pretty important change for Chen. Tier 2 towers are quite a bit stronger now, as well as Cliff being stronger now. In particular, this one is important because this means that just hits 5 targets, which is very valuable against Chen and his army. Just gun down all sorts of creeps. And this is going to make it a lot harder to pursue this general game plan of position 3 Chen, where you want to win your lane and then just push down all the towers as soon as the laning phase ends, and just take down all these tier 1 and tier 2 towers, and to prepare your Roshan and your high ground push. Now this is going to be quite a bit more difficult. Siege damage against heroes increased from 85% to 100%. If you don't know what siege damage is, you should watch my video on armor and attack types, linked up here. And basically what siege damage is it's just the damage type that's done by catapults and towers. And catapults and towers are going to do more damage against heroes. What this means is that it's a bit more difficult to dive people on a tower, because the hero is going to take more damage from towers. And it's going to mean a slight buff to Chen, because he can have his creeps tank the tower damage. And creeps already take 100% damage from siege damage anyway. So it's not a change for Chen, but it's a slight nerf to everyone who doesn't have creeps to tank for them if they dive a tower. So let's get to the neutral unit balance changes. These are very, very important for Chen, obviously. The big one is that Cloak Aura no longer stacks. This is actually the biggest nerf to Chen in this patch. So these, if you don't know, the Cloak Aura is the aura provided by the small Centaur creep and the small Hellbear creep. This is an aura that gives you 20% magic resistance on creeps and 10% magic resistance on heroes. And this aura stacked. So what a lot of Chens were doing was they would just get 4 of these creeps, or if you have a Helm of Dominant, even 5 of these creeps in some cases. And these auras stacked multiplicatively, so it's not like your creeps became immune to magic, but you still had a lot of magic resistance with all these cloak auras. And it was like a very boring way of playing Chen, and it's like really stupid to watch. And it's just kind of dumb that this stacked, but it did, so that's what a lot of Chens were doing, so I'm kind of glad that they did this nerf. It's of course going to make Chen quite a bit weaker, but also like more interesting to play, because you now actually have to get more interesting creeps instead of just stacking these auras and just like being AFK and providing auras for your team. So that's going to make Chen quite a bit weaker. You have to get more of these more active creeps that actually have abilities that you have to cast. Like the neutral Harpy Stormcrafter, this was, and I think still is, the most valuable creep to get at level 1. This has this very amazing Chain Lightning ability that costs only 50 mana, and you used to be able to cast this 8 times before you ran out of mana. But now it's only 3 times, but to compensate for that you get 2 extra mana regen per second, which means if your Harpy stays alive for a bit more than 2 minutes, you're going to have made up this 250 mana that you lost from this nerf, meaning that the Stormcrafter Harpy is no longer quite as bursty, but over the long run it's going to provide even more value. It also means that it's no longer going to be really worth it to send this Harpy back to the base to regen mana, because it only has 150 mana anyway. But you can just keep this Harpy around and just keep casting the Storm Lightnings. And also keep in mind that this Harpy has full night vision, so it has 1800 night vision, more than most heroes. Most heroes have 800 night vision. And this makes this Harpy really strong in the first night, when you have this massive night vision, and this chain lightning ability is still quite strong. Then we get to the Mud Golem. This is a pretty big nerf, going from 125 damage to 75 damage. This means that this Mud Golem is no longer really all that useful. I mean, it still has the benefit of having 50% magic resistance, but 75 damage is just not a very strong nuke. And this just makes this creep rather marginal. I mean, it's still useful to interrupt channeling spells, but other than that, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Mud Golems being used. On the other hand, we see a creep that's actually already reasonably strong. That's the Ghost, one of the creeps from the small camp. And the Ghost is quite useful because there's a lot of DPS. It's piercing damage though, which means that it deals reduced damage against heroes, but increased damage against most creeps. So this Ghost was very strong for farming, And it also has this frost attack, which is actually buffed in this patch from 20% slow to 25% slow on both the move speed and attack speed. So this ghost is just straight up buffed, which is quite nice. And we have the neutral Wool Assassins. These are these little spear chucking creeps that used to be like one of the worst creeps to get, but now they're actually slightly better. They have this poison debuff, which gives 2 damage per second for 10 seconds. And now it also additionally provides a 35% regen reduction. This is just regen reduction, doesn't reduce heal, but still regen reduction is quite useful in lane. And this buff, as I said, lasts for 10 seconds, so this is actually not to be scoffed at. They're still not going to be very high value creeps, but they go from complete trash tier to like okayish. Then we have the Centaur Conqueror. He goes from having a 20-second cooldown on Stomp to 12 seconds. This is actually quite an important buff, because now it means you can often get out 2 Stomps in a fight. So it's going to make this unit quite a bit stronger. It's also most important for position 3 Chen. For position 5 Chen, by the time you get level 5 and you're able to get the Centaur Conquerors, they're already kind of falling off, because later on in the game it's quite difficult to actually get this ability out, because there's so much mobility on all sorts of heroes and there's so much AoE spells flying around that getting off a Stomp in a fight is actually quite hard. But early on these units are quite strong, and position 3 Chen can get these early on, especially with Helm of Dominator. If you have this really fast Conqueror that can actually stun people without needing some sort of setup stun. And having this available every 12 seconds is of course huge. We also have the neutral Dark Troll Summoner. This creep used to be very strong because it was able to cancel channeling spells even through BKB, so it could like channel a Black Hole from a BKB Enigma. But now that you need level 4 Persuasion to actually get this Dark Troll Summoner, and it no longer cancels channeling spells, except for Town Portal, it's just no longer a very useful creep. So it's quite good that it gets some buffs here. And again, as with the buff to the Centaur Conqueror, this is something that's going to primarily affect position 3 Chen, because you can actually get this Dark Troll Summoner reasonably early. Then they have the Ancient Thunderhide. Now Aghanims on Chen is not particularly strong, and it's not going to be particularly strong in this patch either, but it's one of these kind of luxury items you can get on post 3 Chen. And also like you can get Aghanim's buff from Roshan. Chen is not the highest value target for this Roshan buff, but if you do get one of these buffs, this Ancient Thunderhide is now going to be, I guess, slightly stronger. So it loses the damage aura. It had a 15% damage aura, but now it has a 40% accuracy aura. Accuracy means that you pierce evasion. So this is like an alternative to getting something like MKB. So if you have cores in your team who don't really want to get an MKB, but you have evasion in the enemy team, having this Ancient Thunderhide around is going to be quite valuable. And then you also have this attack speed aura being buffed a little bit from 15 to 25. So overall this is like a slight buff to the Ancient Thunderhide, which is already one of the most valuable ancient creeps. And speaking of valuable creeps, we have the Ogre Frost Mage. This used to be one of the strongest creeps to have in the mid and late game because of his Frost Armor spell. And this spell has now gotten a bit of a side grade. It has 2 less armor, but it now works against ranged units. That is, the slow works against ranged units. The armor obviously already worked against any sort of physical damage. And then also the attack slow is increased from 20 to 30 to match the movement speed slow. So overall I think this is like slight buff to the Ogre Frost Mage, so it's a buff to an already very strong creep, making this very valuable to get, regardless of whether you're playing against melee or ranged units. Then we have the Outposts, which are replacing the side shops. And what this is an extra objective you can take starting from 10 minutes. So it's like in the mid and late game, this is providing you some extra value for having map control. And of course, Chen is a hero that excels at giving you map control and dominating the mid game, especially if you're talking about position 3 Chen. So this is like a slight buff to Chen. Then we have neutral items, which are also going to be a slight buff to Chen. So these are items that drop from neutral camps starting from 5 minutes onwards, and they level up every 10 minutes. You get stronger and stronger items. These items don't drop if you don't have a hero nearby. So what you used to be able to do with Chen a lot is just have your creeps somewhere else on the map, pushing out lanes, doing neutral camps, because the creeps are quite strong with the bonus damage they get. Nowadays you can obviously still do that, but you're not going to get those neutral items. And these items a lot of them are quite strong actually, quite valuable, but I'm not going to go over all these 62 different items because I don't want to do a purge level 9-hour analysis here. So I'm just going to scroll past these, but just going to note that a lot of these items are very valuable. And even if you get an item that's not suitable for Chen, that's just like a right-click item or something like that, you can just give them to your carry and benefit your team that way. So these items are very, very valuable. And Chen, of course, a hero that is quite good at clearing camps in the mid and late game. Then you have the item changes. Stout Shield is removed from the game, but melee heroes now have passive 8 damage block, which stacks with other sources of damage block. And this is a 100% chance to get this damage block. So it's slightly weaker than the old Stout Shield, which gave you a 50% chance to block 20 damage. But this is still a buff to like support melee heroes who oftentimes don't necessarily want to buy a Stout Shield. It's kind of like a marginal item, like do you buy a Stout Shield or not, because starting goal is at least used to be quite tight on position 5 heroes. But now you no longer have to make that choice. You always get the 8 damage block, and if you get some other damage block in addition to that, like a Vanguard or a Crimson Guard, that's even going to stack. So like this is like a bit of a side grade for Chen. On the one hand, support heroes are always going to have this damage block if they're melee, and of course damage block is quite strong against Chen's creeps. But on the other hand, basically any core would get a Stout Shield. So cores are going to have slightly less damage block on average. So this is like not really a buff or a nerf, just like a bit different for Chen. Then we have reworks for Buckler, Basilius and Headdress. All three of these items now cost 450 gold. And they all provide 3 stats as well as an aura. So Buckler provides 2 armor aura and no longer has an active. Basilius has a 1.25 mana regen aura and no longer has the armor aura and the damage. And Headdress provides still the old 2 health regen aura. So of these 3 items, clearly the one that benefited the most is Headdress, because it's just a straight up buff. Headdress is less expensive and provides +1 to all stats. So Headdress is now a really, really strong item. And already saw quite a bit of Chen's rushing Headdress. So position 3 Chen would almost always get Headdress right from the start. And we also saw some support Chens, especially Kuro popularized that build. Just rush the Headdress, don't buy any regen, don't buy any support at the start, and just try to get mech out very early. This is going to be a lot stronger right now in this patch, because now you can buy Headdress, and you can also buy a set of tangos and an extra branch, and courier and wards are free anyway. So starting with Headdress is no longer going to be a really greedy build, it's just going to be pretty standard stuff. Other items we can also see occasional play on Chen. Buckler is now quite a bit cheaper, and it's an aura now, no longer the active, so it doesn't provide as much armor to your hero himself, but it still has this very nice armor aura. And Basilius has this really strong regen aura for such a cheap item, but it no longer provides damage, which you don't really care that much as Chen anyway, and no longer, of course, the armor aura. So I think overall it's no longer quite as strong as it used to be. I mean, Basilius was like one of the strongest items in the game as far as the early game went, but now it's still, I think, quite a useful item. Keep in mind that this mana regen aura also affects your creeps, so that's an extra bonus on Chen. And also Chen is quite a bit more mana hungry in this patch, so this very substantial mana regen aura at a low price is something you definitely keep an eye on. And now we get to Vlad. Vlad has been reworked. It's a bit more expensive now, as another 225 gold to complete this item. And as far as the stats go, is it now provides 6 to all attributes, which didn't provide previously. The lifesteal aura has been upgraded to be 25%, regardless of whether it's a ranged or melee hero, whereas previously it was 15 for melee and 10 for ranged. The attack damage aura is gone, the mana regen aura is the same, and the armor aura is slightly weaker. So overall, this item I think is going to be stronger on cores now, who care a lot more about this plus 6 stats than Chen does. Like, even if you play position 3 Chen, he doesn't care all that much about stats. But cores generally came more with this lifesteal aura and not necessarily as much about this damage aura. So this item probably strong on cores, but not as strong on Chen as it used to be. But still, especially if you're position 5 Chen, if none of your cores want to buy this item, this is a perfectly fine item to get, like at the later stages of the mid game or in the late game, because this is an item that scales quite well into the late game. Like, this lifesteal aura is really good for your cores in the late game. So if your cores don't want to buy this as like a luxury item on one of these supports. And it's not like this item is specifically a Chen item, it's just like a strong item you can buy on a support if you can afford it. So Helm Dom is an item that's not very strong in the old patch on position 5 Chen. It's a really overrated item on that position, but it's a core item on position 3 Chen, and I think that's not going to change. So it's also getting a bit more expensive, just like Vlad's. Another 225 gold added on top of the alt cost, and now it gets this 50% buff on the aura bonuses on play units, that is on heroes and on all sorts of other units controlled by players. It has plus 7 stats instead of plus 2 stats, so another 5 stats. Has this attack speed aura replaced by a damage aura, also 20%, and this health regen aura gets slightly weaker, but keep in mind this 50% bonus here. So this 5 health regen aura is really like a 7.5 health regen aura on player control units, and this is like a 30% damage aura. So overall this item is quite a bit stronger, but it's slightly more expensive as well. So on Chen, who doesn't really care that much about the stats, this item is like a side grade. That it's more expensive is quite important, because it's like really important for Chen to get this item very early on if you're playing position 3. But you're also getting the stronger aura, so it's kind of a bit of a wash. This item is still going to be really strong on position 3 Chen, and probably even slightly weaker on position 5 Chen. Drum is an item that's kind of marginal on Chen, because the stats it provides are not that important. You don't really care about attributes and movement speed, but the active is really strong. So it's like really good to have someone in your team buy a drum, but you don't want to buy it yourself on Chen. And I think that's still the same in the new patch. But like the most important thing that's changed is that drum is more expensive, kind of in line with the other items we discussed previously. And it's replaced this mana regeneration with an attack speed aura, which of course is a lot stronger on Chen. And especially it's going to be stronger if someone else in your team buys this item. The active charges are really strong for yourself and for your creeps, but like this all stats, movement speed, you don't really care about that very much, but you want this attack speed aura. So this is an item that fits really well into Chen's game plan of just like pushing in the early mid game, especially for core Chen. This is an item you want someone else in your team to buy, you need to rush. So if you have this early jumps in your team, you can just push a lot better and just fulfill Chen's role much better. And if someone else buys this, you can just free yourself up to buy other aura items that fit better on Chen. And here is a very big one. Mechanism no longer provides this armor aura and the armor on the active, but that's okay because it's now much cheaper because it uses chainmail instead of buckler, of course making it a bit cheaper. And then also the headdress is getting cheaper, so on the whole neck is getting much cheaper. And like, yeah, you're losing some region here, but you don't really care about that. You really care about the active, and the active is still going to be the same. So mech is going to be much stronger, and especially this reduction in price is going to affect position 5 Chen, which is now going to be able to much more easily afford mech because it's cheaper and just because he doesn't have to spend money on wards. So we're going to see a lot more Chens rushing mech on position 5. And if you remember my old video on item builds on Chen, linked up here, I was kind of critical of this build that especially was pioneered by Kuro, of just starting with the headdress and then rushing mech. But whether or not that was actually good in the last patch, it's, I think, very good in this patch, because just headdress is much stronger and mech is much stronger. So I think this is going to be the go-to build for position 5 Chens in this patch. Then we have Crimson Guard, which is an item, of course, you can buy on Chen, but more importantly, it's an item that's really good against Chen, because damage block, of course, blocks the damage from your creeps. Crimson Guard gets some nerfs here, but it gets an indirect buff by stacking with this innate damage block that melee heroes have in this patch. So I think Crimson Guard is like, it's like a side grade for Crimson Guard. So it's like a wash for Chen. But what isn't a wash is Guardian Greaves. Guardian Greaves, the finish item is getting a little bit weaker because you no longer have this this armor aura, but the cost goes down from the recipe, and of course mech is getting a lot cheaper, so in total 625 gold cheaper, and that's just so huge. So Guardian Greaves is going to be a huge item on Chen, especially because you're kind of mana starved with mech, so upgrading to Guardian Greaves is very valuable. Holy Locket has been reworked, and Holy Locket used to be pretty much unanimously agreed upon the worst item in the game. And Chen was one of the very few heroes on which you could consider getting Holy Locket. And these changes, I think, are a little bit of a buff. So it no longer provides reach and amplification, only heal amplification. But the heal amplification has been buffed. Gives a little bit more health. And now uses the magic one instead of a cloak. And of course, magic one is a much more efficient item than cloak. So that is definitely a buff. And on the other hand, the recipe cost has been increased by 300. So overall, this item a bit more expensive, but stronger. So in heroes that benefit a lot from the regeneration amplification, like Timber Saw or Necro, they might find this item actually to be slightly weaker. But for Chen, I mean, you still have a decent amount of regen from your aura and from other items you buy. But you care a lot more about this heal amplification from your ultimate and from mech. So I think on Chen, this item is definitely going to be stronger. Will we see it a lot? Probably not, but it's like a decent item to get now. Don't rush this, definitely. But if you already have Greaves, why not go for Holy Locket if there's no other item you need urgently? Eternal Shadows is an item you occasionally bought on Chen, not because it has any particularly strong synergy with Chen, but just because it's an extremely efficient item, and you basically always want to have Eternal Shadows somewhere on your team. And now it gets slightly less efficient. Now you need to buy a Sage's Mask instead of Infused Raindrops, And what you can do with infused raindrops is you just buy those raindrops and let them get down to 1 charge, absorb some damage, maybe save your life once or twice. And then when you have this 1 charge raindrop, you can just turn it into Urn of Shadows. So it's no longer possible, you just have to get the Sage's Mask, which is a less valuable item. But on the whole, Urn of Shadows is still quite strong. Infused Raindrops also a value item you sometimes get on Chen. Slightly stronger now to compensate for the fact that it's no longer going to be able to be turned into Urn of Shadows. Then we have these general supporty items. Nothing very Gen specific about those. Dust gets like slightly more convenient to buy. Sentry wards, they last a bit longer, but there's fewer sentries available. When dealing with invis heroes, that's pretty much a wash, but it makes it a bit more difficult to deward, and conversely a bit easier to keep ops wards up. This also means that position 5 heroes are going to have to invest less money into sentry wards, and especially combined with the change to ops wards no longer costing any sort of gold. That just means that position 5 heroes is going to have more gold available. And of course, Chen is a hero that likes gold, so that's good for Chen, but of course it's also good for lots of other heroes who also can benefit from having extra items. And then smoke, well, there's fewer smokes available at the start, but more of them later. That's not really a buff or a nerf to Chen, it's just like general change. We have some general buffs to right-click items. Of course, that's like an indirect nerf to Chen because he's not a right-clicking kind of hero. Especially the problem is going to be Battle Fury buff. So Battle Fury has no more damage, which means more heroes are going to be able to afford to buy Battle Fury. And then of course it's bad news for your creeps. This is not going to be a huge deal, but it's just like this is an indirect change that's going to make Chen slightly weaker. Glimmer Cape can now be used on couriers and on units. So you can now Glimmer Cape your creeps, which is kind of nice, but it's like fairly marginal. But occasionally you're going to be able to save one of your creeps that way. So it's like a slight buff to Chen and Glimmer Cape. And the Glimmer Cape is a really strong item anyway, so additional buffs are always welcome. So we've already gone over the Chen hero changes. I'm not going to go through all the other heroes and like speculate on how that affects Chen because it's all going to be fairly marginal. And I don't want to make this video 9 hours long. So instead, let's just jump into demo mode and look at how Chen is going to be played in the next patch. I'm not an oracle, I can't predict the future with certainty, but this is just my guesses. My guess, as I already said, is that mech rushing is going to be a lot more stronger on Chen, and especially on position 5 Chen. So you can now start with this headdress. You can get a tango and an Ironwood branch. You can share 2 tangos to mid, and you still have this headdress aura, which of course is very strong, and then you can either just eat the tango directly, or you can plant the Ironwood branch and then eat the tango. And the fact that you have that very little region in this build is not really a problem because you have your personal courier right from the start. So you can always just chip yourself region if you run out. So I think this is a build that you're going to see a lot on Chen. And this is just a really cheap upgrade. You get this chainmail for 550, and then this mech. Doesn't cost very much. It's less than 2,000 gold for this mech. And because you no longer have to buy these observer wards and you no longer have to buy courier, position 5 Chen is actually going to have a lot more gold than it used to. And for the same reason, position 4 and 5 are going to become a lot more similar because you probably still want to have a position 4 mostly held by the off lane because winning lanes is so important. And because the position 5 no longer needs to spend money on wards, only on sentries if necessary. Position 5 is going to have like almost as much farm as position 4, so maybe you're going to see some Chen moving into position 4 and some more traditional position 4 heroes being played as the 5 because now these positions are just more interchangeable. And either way, I think rushing this mech is really, really strong. And then of course you have this natural extension with Greaves. Other traditional support items are still going to be really strong. Medallion, Glimmer Cape got like a slight buff. Force Staff is more or less the same as it used to be. All these sort of traditional support items are still going to be strong on Chen. Mech, as I said, is a bit stronger. Vlad's slightly weaker on Chen now. It's going to move slightly more into a core-ish item. But as I said in my guide on general item builds, Vlad's is still an item that's really good, that scales really good well into the late game. So if none of your cores wants to buy a Vlad's, this is a perfectly valid item to get. You don't need to rush it, just get it at some point. And it's going to offer you a lot of value. Also, this Bassi is like a really good value item right now. This 1.25 mana region is something that you can definitely get. If you're not rushing mech, maybe you want to start with the Bassi at the start and provide a lot of value to your lane that way. You don't really need that much mana region at the start, but your lane ally might. But I think in most cases you want to start with this headrest build. Position 3 Chen is still going to be quite strong, I think. So this item has changed quite a bit, but I think it's still about as strong as it used to be, maybe even slightly stronger. So you also want to start with this headrest build. And as position 3 Chen, I think you can afford to be a little bit greedier and just go with 3 Ironwood branches, giving you a lot of stats at the start. This is +6 to all stats. It's quite strong to the start, and because you have a courier anyway available, if you do need some region, you can still ship it out to you. And you can just like ship it out after you get 2 runes, you get 80 gold, and then just a little bit of tick gold, and you have your set of tangos, which should usually be enough. And if you do run out, you have your own courier, you can just ship yourself a salve. So that's going to be quite strong. And it's just a really solid start, allows you to do better last hitting, even better than they used to with the headrest and the Fairy Fire, because that used to provide you 4 damage, now you get 6 damage, as well as of course some extra bulkiness. Your range can be take over at the start, only going to have 700 HP, but that's still good enough for most purposes. And I feel like Chen position 3 is still going to be very, very strong, because you're getting max level and 100 persuasion a lot earlier than you would on a support Chen. And that's going to allow you to do the same sort of thing that position 3 Chen used to do in the last patch. I still feel like you want to get a level of penitence as position 3 Chen, because the slow is just really, really nice. And I think you also probably want to max the second after Holy Persuasion, because that slow and the extra attack speed for your creeps is just really strong. If you have that strong creep army you get with Helm Dom and all those creeps you get early on. As for your second item, oftentimes in the last patch you saw people getting Vlad's. As I said, Vlad's slightly weaker now. On Chen, you can still go for it, but I think in many cases you actually want to go for this mech and just go this mech and rush Greaves, or you can go just for something more like a pipe if you need that, because you no longer have the option of stacking these cloak auras, so this pipe is going to be more attractive now. If you go for the mech, you definitely need to get some sort of mana region, of course, and that's of course why this Arcane Boots is the perfect follow-up, followed up with this upgrade to Greaves. You can also just get this value Basilius. You don't need to upgrade this to a Vlad. This is just a perfectly fine aura on its own. Like 1.25 mana region is quite strong. Affects your creeps as well, of course. Vlads and drums are items that fit really well into your general game plan of just pushing after laning stage with your team. But they're no longer as strong on Chen himself. Especially like Vlads is weaker on Chen himself. And like drums was never very good on Chen himself. But just having someone with that drum and being able to provide that active is really good on Chen. So if you position 3 Chen and you have like a like a 2 and a 4 who want to go for Vlad and Drum. That's really valuable to have on Chen, and it just frees you up to go for items like mech and pipe, and just really have this strong early mid-game timing that position 3 Chen excels at. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to see quite a bit in the upcoming patch. So in summary, Chen got some well-deserved nerfs. He was like the #1 hero at the Chengdu Major. And sure, there was Earthshaker plus Morphling, this really broken combo, but this was like a 2-hero combo, and the heroes themselves were not really all that strong by themselves. But Chen by himself was just always strong, pretty much no matter the lineup. Whether he was playing position 5 or position 3, I've even saw a game of position 4 Chen being played by Liquid. Chen was just really, really strong at the Major. He was previously extremely strong at TI. He received some significant nerfs, but still stayed a very strong hero. So it's very understandable that he gets some nerfs, but these are overall quite measured and moderate nerfs. So I predict that Chen is going to fall in minute a little bit, but he's still going to be quite strong. We're still going to see a lot of Chen. We're going to see Chen being played on position 3, position 5, and even position 4. I don't think we're going to see position 1 or 2 Chen. That doesn't really make sense. It doesn't scale that well. But definitely anything from position 3 to 5 is going to be really, really strong in the future. And Chen is a hero that can really make use of this extra gold you get now as position 5. So that's going to make him quite viable. He's no longer going to be quite this boring aura provider that just runs around and gives these cloak auras. But he's going to provide more value to his team by having this extremely efficient mech. And some of these other groups were buffed. So I think position 5 Chen is going to be fine. Position 3 Chen is maybe even slightly better because some of these creep buffs. Because especially these creeps like the Centaur and the Dark Summoner are creeps that especially position 3 Chen likes to utilize, and they're now considerably stronger. So this sort of death ball timing that position 3 Chen can get is overall like a little bit stronger. On the other hand, we have these buffs to Glyph and to tier 2 towers. That's going to make this early mid-game push a little bit weaker. But on the whole, position 3 Chen is still going to be quite strong. So I predict that Chen is no longer going to be like the #1 hero in the meta, but still is going to be a hero that's like above average, that's going to be picked quite a bit, it's going to be banned quite a bit. And now that it's like slightly weaker, he might actually be picked even more than he used to be, because he's no longer just going to be instantly first phase banned in every game. So I'm actually looking forward to that. So if you want to come along with me on this journey of exploring how Chen is going to be played in this new patch, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. In the meantime, I invite you to look at some of these older videos, which are of course from the last patch, but mostly the advice there still applies. And I'll see you there. And in the meantime, may Obelisk watch over you, and cheers.